Okay, so welcome everybody to our next session, and this is another brilliant alumni panel today. So please give a warm welcome. We have got Greg, Elian, Danielle, Jake and Abbas today, so please give them a warm welcome. Thank you. Fantastic. It's a fairly eclectic mix, I would say, of careers that we've got here, but pretty fair to say that most of you living your best lives, aren't you? Doing dream jobs kind of thing. So if we could start with you, Greg, just tell us sort of, your journey from Leeds Trinity to where you are now.
Hello, well, my name's Greg Wright. I'm the Deputy Business Editor of the Yorkshire Post. I'm a former graduate here. I was a student here. I did history with public media back in the day. And I basically trained as a journalist, and over time I developed a specialism in business. I've been on the business desk at the Yorkshire Post for quite a few years now. And it's fascinating. I think I'd always say to people, have a really open mind about your career objectives. I actually used to be a student sitting where you are now. I used to sit in the back row of Mary Halloway, not that long ago. And if you told me then that I would now be working as a business journalist as opposed to a news journalist, I wouldn't have believed you. So I think the lesson I've learned from my experience is have a really open mind, be open to all possibilities, all different types of experiences, and be willing to consider things you might not have thought about doing. I came to business quite late in my career, but I really enjoyed it. So the key thing, I think, is to have an open mind, get as much experience in networking as you can, and enjoy your course. So that's my sort of thing to start off with. Brilliant. And thank you for inviting me down here.
Thank you. Elian?
First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being back here. I think to simplify it, my journey has really just begun. I graduated here this July from the film course that I studied here. So I'm only just finding my feet, really. And really that involves championing the creative courses here at Leeds Trinity and using everything from the course, the films that I made when I studied film here to submitting to festivals and luckily, every now and then winning an award, which obviously the elation from that is incredible. But then also, having the time to support myself and realise that, the journey is going to be long. It's not instantaneous. So yeah, at the minute it's supporting myself and networking and trying to get my name out there as a filmmaker.
Excellent, thank you. And Danielle?
Hi, I am Danielle. I graduated in 2017 in media marketing, and this is actually the first time I've been back on campus since then, so it's a little bit wild actually. But when I was here, I was dead set on a career in theme parks. So my final year, every single piece of coursework that I could possibly do, I related it to a theme park, to an attraction somehow. My dissertation was on the Smiler accident and how it affected the public perceptions of the brand, and then a whole host of other related topics. So I had one on opening a dungeons, if you've ever been to the London dungeons, opening one of those in Tokyo. I did one on a ride opening, all sorts of things. But I did have a little bit of a setback. So I applied for the Merlin graduate scheme to join their marketing department, and unfortunately got all the way to the end and then didn't land the job, and I was pretty gutted, to be honest. So I was lucky enough to be offered a job with a tour operator called Super Break. They had late rooms as well, if you remember them from back in the day. And they sold overseas holidays, British holidays, like hotels, theatre trips, and theme parks and attractions. So I was like, perfect, this is an in. I worked there for a year in a whole host of different marketing roles and responsibilities. But the coolest thing I probably did there was brand up the side of a plane. It was the best thing. They were chartering planes to Iceland, and they were like, we need to brand this plane as Super Break. So I was like, perfect. But then I was also responsible for creating the content, writing the copy for the brochures, the photography within there as well. Was there for a year and was really, really lucky to finally then get into a theme park. So I moved over to the Midlands from York and started a marketing role at Drayton Manor, which was a bit wild. We went through a whole host of different crisis incidents. We had a flood, a fire, pandemic, administration, and an inquest, all within 6 months. So that was a fun one. But I covered loads of different things there. A bit of marketing 360, and then eventually focusing on social media after like 2 years. So I was there for about 5.5 years. And then recently, this February, so less than a year, I joined the team at Alton Towers. And there I am the content creator and social media editor, which essentially means I manage all of their social channels.
Hi, my name's Jake. I work in the social team at Liverpool FC. I graduated in 2018, and I think, similar to Danielle, I think in my final year, kind of knew that I wanted to work internally for a sports team, whether it be football, rugby, or wherever else. That came off the back of my placement, where I worked within the team at Wakefield Trinity, and then came out of uni like a lot of people, was applying for jobs elsewhere, or here, there, and everywhere, and finding out, you've not got experience. So I spent probably the first 1.5 to 2 years out of uni just doing voluntary roles at Huddersfield Town and Salford Red Devils, doing that alongside a full-time job, just working behind a bar, really. And then from there, got my first full-time gig working at Featherstone Rovers, just managing their media department, which is quite a small setup. They're like a second-tier rugby league team. And then from there, moved over to football, which is kind of the sport I've always wanted to work in because I'm a big football fan. Worked at Blackburn Rovers for a short while, then transitioned externally to a marketing agency working in sports such as golf and horse racing and brand work with like Adidas and other places, and then had that itch to go back into football. So I had the opportunity to go to Salford City, who are a smaller club but got a really big media outreach because of the documentary, the fact that they're owned by the class of 92, so there's quite a big interest there with them. Worked there for the best part of 2 seasons, and then this March moved over to Liverpool, and boy, a Liverpool fan, so that's worked out quite nicely. And yeah, been there since back into last season, through the summer, and then started this season.
Thank you. And Abbas?
So yeah, my name's Abbas, guys. I think I graduated in 2017. I want to say, I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on it. But essentially, yeah, once I left university, I was like, right, got my degree, that's it, I'm going to be able to get a job, no problem. Applied for an interview with BBC Sport, got the interview, and I thought, that's it, I've got the job. They turned around and said, sorry, we don't want you. And I was like, can I get some feedback? And they said, you don't have a portfolio outside of university. And I sat back, thought, what does that mean? Realised, okay, I've got my degree, but outside of that, I've got nothing else. So, bought a MacBook. And as you guys know, they're expensive. And I was like, right, how can I make the most out of this MacBook to be able to get my money back off it, but also gain a portfolio? Downloaded Adobe Premiere Pro. That gives you the free trial. Basically reached out to so many companies, be like, look, it's the end of the year. Do you want a show reel edited, etc.? They were like, yep, we can do it. So I made some money back off that. And then from there, I had a little bit of portfolio. Joined a program called BComs. If any of you guys don't know it, I definitely recommend looking at it, especially while you're at university. It's one of the best things you could probably do as well. And that involved me traveling from Burnley all the way to London every 2 weeks. I was going to places like Sky Sports, West Ham, BT, anything you can imagine in London, we were there, doing content for them and being in masterclasses. From there, transitioned to working for TNT Sports and their socials. Did that for about 1.5 years, and whilst I appreciate what they were giving me, they weren't allowing me to progress what I wanted to do, which was essentially being that main content creator. On the side, I was doing a boxing podcast, and then from there, I was able to link up with a team that I now work with, where basically I go around the UK and abroad, interviewing fighters, promoters, and yeah, just essentially creating content on YouTube and then transitioning that onto social media. And right now, as Lynn said, yeah, we kind of living the dream, because anytime you can get Eddie Hearn to sing KSI lyrics or try to do that, I think we're doing all right. So yeah, that's my little intro.
Thank you. I think, it sounds like there's kind of quite a common theme amongst you all, even though you've got very sort of different jobs and you've had very different paths, that there's that resilience, as things haven't come straight into your laps. You have to kind of work at it and stick at it. Abbas, you were saying you've been working in a pensions department alongside to be able to fund. So for everybody here, what does it take, when you're feeling like you're not getting where you want to be going, what mindset do you need to have to kind of achieve your dreams?
I think you've got to have your own personal belief, because if you don't have that, then no one else can believe in you. And then it's just that continuous idea that keep going. At the end of the day, everyone can see what they allow you to see on social media, but nobody will know what's happening behind the scenes. I recently watched an interview with Coogan, and if any of you boxing fans know, does IFL, and he said, look, for the first 4 years, we were just breaking even. Now we're the biggest platform, and that's been running for 14 years. So I guess you've got to get that mind frame in that nothing can be instant, but if you continue to work hard at it, it's impossible for you not to get to where you want to be.
Excellent. And Jake, do you have any tips for just persistence?
I echo a lot of what Abbas said, because I did that same thing when I left uni, and then I was applying for jobs and did say, like, you're great, but what have you done since uni? And for the first few months I hadn't done anything and just didn't have any experience to go with it other than my placement. So that's why I just kind of reached out to pretty much every football, rugby, whatever club within like a mile radius, well, not a mile, an hour's radius of me, and just Huddersfield and Salford took me on. And then, it was a really busy time where I'm working a full-time job and trying to balance that with trying to get the most out of those opportunities. But then from Salford, I knew somebody who'd worked at Featherstone, and then that opportunity came. But I think persistence as well is such a big thing. Like, I reckon 3 of the jobs that I've had post-uni, three of them came off of like getting a no in an interview beforehand. So like Featherstone, I interviewed for that straight out of uni, didn't get it, and then came back a year and a half later, just like a stronger candidate, and got it the second time round. And at Liverpool, I think it was 2 years ago, I first applied for a job at Liverpool, got through a couple of rounds of interviews, didn't get a job there. And then when I worked for the marketing agency Creative Players, somebody had just left Liverpool who I'd met through the interviews and just reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, would you be interested in this? And that was a great opportunity for me. And then likewise, when I interviewed for Liverpool this time around, it was just a case of, what have I learned since then? Am I a better candidate? And here I am now. So I think it's just persistence and just trying to get as much exposure as you can to meeting different people, developing your skill set and expanding your network, really.
Danielle, do you have any tips for the students?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm actually quite fortunate that the main job that I really, really wanted and not got was that Merlin graduate scheme. But I think what's really helped me is Trinity, as you guys know, is incredible for professional placements. And having that on my CV was incredible. My first placement was at Northern Ballet Phoenix Dance Theatre within their marketing team. So I did the 3-month period there and did a whole host of like awesome stuff. I wrote blogs, helped with the web content management, was there on like the event days, that type of thing. And then, to be honest, decided maybe dance companies wasn't quite for me, but having that experience was incredible. Second placement, I went to a marketing agency in Leeds, had the best time, had some really great brands on my CV from that. I had like Pot Noodle, Lucasade, MTV, and just having them brands on my CV is what really helped to elevate. Another thing as well, I don't know if any of you guys do this here, but I was a student ambassador during my time, and the experience that you get from that is just incredible, as well as a little bit of extra pocket money for you. But I went to loads of different schools, different colleges, helped with personal statements, did like the UCAS fairs, did campus tours, and having that on my CV was incredible, but it also really helped my confidence grow. So just get as much experience as you possibly can, get those big brands on your CV, and networking is massively important as well. When I was in my second and third year, I would message everyone I could possibly think of on LinkedIn that was in the field of work that I wanted to be in, ask for tips, ask for advice. But essentially what I was doing was getting my name known so that when it did come to me applying for jobs and in the interview stages, they already knew my name.
Fabulous. And I think another sort of common theme for all of you is social media as well. Obviously, some of you are actually working in social media, but could we just talk about how, like for us oldies, you've harnessed social media now. A lot of the job entails social media, and some of you, the others have, you've had to harness social media, and it's really helped you get where you are now. So what's your are you reluctant?
No, I love it. I think social media is
it?
fantastic. I think the key thing is you've got to be really thoughtful about how you engage with people. if people Google you, what do they find out? You know, I always Google myself all the time just to see what's out there about me and what judgments will people make. And the most important thing, and it's really good that this has been mentioned, is get on LinkedIn. Build up your LinkedIn connections, because that's one of the first things people see is your LinkedIn page. And it's really interesting because I connect with lots of students who are interested in careers in journalism, but it's the first thing you see. You go on somebody's LinkedIn page, that's your sort of way of selling yourself to the world. It's your shop window. Think about things you post on Instagram and Facebook as well. And if they are sort of, you know, are they helping you in terms of your career or not? But be really thoughtful about the image you're projecting on social media. It's quite fashionable at times to talk about social media as a negative thing. In the context of my job, in general, I found it incredibly nurturing and supportive. The reason for this, I mean, one of the stories I've been working on is a story called the loan charge, which is a scandalous government policy. It's been linked with a number of suicides. It's a really flawed tax policy, and there's been terrible suffering associated with it. Now, I started writing stories about the loan charge. On the back of that, I built this really big community of people affected by the loan charge scandal. Hundreds of people, thousands of people came out of absolutely nowhere from around the world contacting me. And that's one of the great things about social media. There's a lot of bad stuff about it, but you can nurture communities. And it's easy to, you know, to block or filter the stuff that's really bad. But it is, to me, it's a positive. And I think often people fixate on the negative, people fixate on the bad stuff. It's quite easy, if you think about it intelligently, to zone out the bad stuff and focus on the good. But I think that what I would always do is think really carefully about the first thing that people find out about you. And to go back briefly to the thing about tenacity, I got my first job in journalism at the 60th attempt. So I sent off lots of CVs in the old-fashioned way. If I'd quit after the 50th attempt, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, I wouldn't be sitting here now. So I think if you believe in yourself and you've got the ability, you will make it. Always believe that. And it's, you know, people say it's hard working in the media. It is hard working in the media. But I think the reason that it's hard, I think, is because there's not many opportunities. But the opportunities are there. You've got to have the courage and the tenacity to keep pursuing them. But to go back to the social media thing, it actually can be an incredible force for good, but you must be really thoughtful about what people find out about you when they Google your name, because that's what any employer will do. It's the first thing they do. And if it's overwhelmingly positive, you've got a LinkedIn page with hundreds of connections, great posts, thoughtful, insightful posts, it's a very good chance you'll get an interview.
I just wanted to say the point about LinkedIn. I never used LinkedIn initially because I didn't see the value on it, but once I get onto it, it kind of does 50% of the work for you. What I mean by that is you can set itself to the jobs that you want and stuff like that. So what it starts doing is it will email you jobs. Instead of you going out there and looking for jobs, it will email you certain jobs in certain areas and certain fields. And then you just have to go ahead and apply. And then to go back to the point about connections, look at the email address of the person it may want you to contact. Actually connect with them on LinkedIn sometimes. Privately message them sometimes about asking about a bit more information about the job and what particular things they are specifically looking for. And then use LinkedIn Premium, because sometimes that will offer you the opportunity to have that for 1 month for free. So take advantage of what you can do at a premium base for free, and then just go all in on that as well. But yeah, I think for now, LinkedIn's probably one of them platforms that is so important for people growing into the world of journalism, because it does the job for you and it allows you to connect to people. One of the first people I connected on Matchroom was from the PR team. And from there, I was able to speak to him, get his number, get onto the mailing list. And then from now, I'm basically at every Matchroom boxing event I can get to. So yeah, just to get to your point, LinkedIn's super important, and keep that professional. Don't get me wrong. So for example, my Instagram page, it's professional in the sense of you'll see my boxing interviews and stuff like that. My Twitter page is more of my personality. My LinkedIn's also professional. So also separate your social media pages, and then that way you've got a good idea of who the individual is and also the personality behind it as well.
But if you do want to just have a personal social media page, that's great. Just private it. Just be careful what you post on there.
And Elliot, as a young filmmaker, you've kind of had to harness social media, haven't you, as a way of...
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, excuse me, because, you know, what I'm trying to sell is obviously myself as a filmmaker, but also the films I'm making. So I'm actually basically just putting a product out there for people to watch and pick up. And it's really helped me in the sense of lots of UK festivals have reached out through Twitter or Instagram and said, we'd love to have you in the festival, which has then led to awards and stuff like that. So it's incredibly helpful. And I agree with everyone in the sense of it was a bit scary when I realised that I'm branding myself and I'm now becoming a representative of myself. So you have to sort of clear through the social media and make sure everything's absolutely professional, and also be really smart about who you're contacting, who you're following, what pages you're reposting, to try and get yourself seen, because it just takes that one opportunity, you know. If you network with fellow, like for myself, I'm networking with fellow filmmakers and cinematographers, sound editors, all this sort of stuff, so that it's branching out, and I'm looking towards, you know, getting funding, and I'm getting advice of all these people. It's absolutely fantastic. But then at the same time, you know, recently I connected with a friend back home, and he said, you know, what is it that you know, what you've been up to? And I said, well, you know, it's just all this film stuff. And he was like, all right, have you made a film? I was like, well, a few at the minute. He was like, all right, where can I watch that? I was like, mate, I've put it on my story every single week. How have you not seen this? So sometimes, you know, it's not perfect. And I think patience is the word that I would absolutely use, especially for myself and creatively. You know, you just got to wait. You submit to a festival, you don't know if it's going to be there, and then a year later you can get an award. So, yeah, you never know.
And how scary is it, kind of putting your work out there, and you know, for potentially millions of people to see, and you know, they're going to comment, aren't they? Is that? Do you think that's a barrier to some people for not? You know, how do you sort of find the
Oh no,
courage to
definitely,
do that?
yeah. I think because when you create something, you obviously put a lot of yourself into it. You can't help but do that. So obviously you've got to have a thick skin, and you've got to be really grounded and self-aware, and especially when you know, peers or people who have made it are in the positions that you want to be in, you've got to keep your ears open and really take absolutely everything in that they say. I mean, I remember when I put, I think it was my second film out that I'd used the equipment here from Leeds Trinity, and I actually remember messaging my mum and being like, oh my God, it's got to 1,000 views. Like, this is it, get ready. You know, you get ready, I'm going to get you a mansion in Hollywood, this is it. Obviously that's not it, it's not just the views, obviously you've got to have the right people viewing it. But then that just went up and up and up, and it's now on 2.2 million views. So it's like, I mean, that alone is really weird to say, thank you. It's really weird to say that. But then at the same time, from those 2.2 million, has a Hollywood director contacted me? No, you know, no, not yet. But so yes, 2.2 million people have seen it, but it's not, you know, the one person yet who's you know, been able to reach out and get me in a position. So yeah, I think it's just yeah, you just got to be really, really patient, I think.
And in terms of sort of winning awards, so we've got a few sort of award winners amongst the panel. Through my career, I always sort of used to wait for other people to nominate me for awards, and you kind of have to push yourself and nominate yourself, don't you? What advice would you give around that? Because it does raise your profile, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I would say enter as many awards as you can, which you think you've got a chance of winning. And I think also it's believing in yourself. I think when I obviously, like many people, have entered quite a lot of awards, but the key thing is, it's like anything, you study the criteria very closely, but also you think about, what is the judge looking for? In this category, say it's Business Journalist of the Year, or if you're making a documentary or anything else, if I was on the judging panel for this particular award, what would I be looking for in an award-winning entry? And then you give them that. You give them what they want, which is basically an award-winning entry. So but I always say, sometimes people are quite self-effacing, and you've got nothing to lose. There are lots of student journalism awards, for example, and obviously things to do with video as well. But I'd always say, have a go, think about it. If you don't make it first time round, don't worry. You just keep going. I mean, the key thing, and I've been a journalist for a long time, is just keep going. It sounds a really sort of simple thing to say, but just keep going. I think the thing about when you do win an award, it does really give you a massive sense of self-worth. And I think all of us like affirmation. We all like to believe that what we're doing is valuable. And I think the psychological uplift you get from winning an award cannot be underestimated. it's great for you professionally. You can put it on your LinkedIn page and everything else, but it's what it says to you as well. Because I think often we tend to sort of be quite self-critical because we have high standards in our professions. And I think if you can actually win an award, it's a way of almost showing to yourself and proving to yourself that what you do is valuable. So yes, I would definitely do that. And like I say, anybody who wants any help or mentoring, I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to get in touch with me, you're very welcome to do that. But I think, what Lindsay's saying, and all the people are great award winners as well, but it's so important to set your standards high. And don't, if you have a knockback, just keep going. I mean, I had so many rejection letters when I was starting out. I could have, basically filled my entire room with letters saying, there's no openings here, but just don't give up. And I think if you believe in yourself, you'll make it.
And just before we sort of go to questions, just wanted to ask, has anybody got any, sort of interesting, funniest moments from their sort of career journey so far? Nobody?
I could chuck one in, actually, really quickly. An example of a story, being in the right place at the right time. Years ago, I was working in the Yorkshire Post on a weekend, and this release came in from Rilston Women's Institute in the Yorkshire Dales. And it was the old-fashioned days when you used to actually send stuff in. And it was about a new calendar, charity calendar. And it was members of the Women's Institute who basically had disrobed for a charity calendar. And I thought, this is really interesting. So we basically went out, we got copies of the pictures of the calendar. And you're probably familiar with the Calendar Girl story. That was the story. And we basically got it in the Yorkshire Post, and a few years later it was a Hollywood movie and national phenomenon. And that was basically a single tip-off, a single story in the Yorkshire Post, and it went global. And that's the story that will define me, I think, is the Calendar Girls, I think. Nothing else does. But that is an example of how you can be in the right place at the right time, but just using the initiative. And it's just being able to spot something. But that was my lucky break. I got the Calendar Girls out into the public domain.
And everybody followed that story, including me.
Shucks. Yeah, well, it was lucky. I was lucky. But, luck is one factor as well, yeah.
I've got a funny one, actually. So when I was at Drayton Manor, it was around the time that TikTok first became a thing, basically. And during COVID, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to just at least get the handle, because I don't want anybody else to try and intimidate the brand, that kind of thing. Got the handle. And then eventually, over the course of maybe 2 years, I grew it from literally scratch to 100,000 followers, which I was really proud of. But a lot of what I did with that was based on personality and utilising myself and other colleagues to be the face of the TikTok channel. And there was one year we were closing one of our rides, and it was a historic ride. Everybody knew and loved it. So at the same time, we had a summer offer, and our managing director was a little bit cuckoo and told me, because I also managed influencers at that role as well, so told me a couple of days before, what I would really, really like is some of the Love Islanders that have just come out to be featured on this content. I was like, right, okay. Got some quotes, 500k for one of them, 20k for another. I was like, oh, but what's my budget? $2,000. I was like, right, okay. And I ended up with Molly Salmon, I think her name was, and someone called George. They came for £1,000 each, which in influencer fees is absolutely nothing. So I was like, right, okay, got them, that's great. Did a video on this ride. It was a drop tower ride, so it takes you up and then drops you free fall, basically. And as we were going up, we were talking about this offer. Come this summer, you'll get a free ticket, blah, blah, blah. And they could not deliver the lines. They just could not do it. So we were going up this drop tower, and I was like, no one's saying anything. So I tried to deliver it. And then it dropped, and they were both screaming and going mental. I was like, do you want to go again? And we'll try and actually deliver the lines this time. And they're like, no, we can't do it again. I was like, right, fine. So posted this video, and it's me you get this free ticket, basically screaming to try and get the microphone to hear me. And it went viral, and I was like, oh no. I think it hit something crazy, 1.5 million views or something, and it got picked up by Lad Bible as well. And
you're in trouble now.
Yeah, the headline was something along the lines of whoever the Love Islander was that year that won had a deal with one of the big fashion brands. And these guys had a deal with Drayton Manor. How hilarious is that? And in the write-up, they had a picture of me, and they'd zoomed in on my face, like, and said, it said something along the lines of, Drayton Manor staff member is embarrassed by this, and like called me out completely. So it was great. My managing director looked at me and was like, "You got it in the press." No press.
Publicity.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Shall we open up to questions? Anybody got any question for anybody on the panel? Oh. It's like the Olympics.
Hi, Abbas, I have a question for you. I quite like boxing myself, to be honest. I wanted to know who you think is going to win the fight next Friday between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson.
I'd probably say Jake. If you want me to be honest, I'd probably say Jake. I always have a thing, leave the boxing before the boxing leaves you. And it left Mike Tyson a long time ago. It really did. So I would say Jake Paul. He doesn't go into fights that he doesn't expect to win. But all I'm saying is just please next year, somehow, some way, make the fight in that influencer scene between Jake and KSI. Get me on a flight to wherever you need to be and I will be there. But yeah, Jake Paul 100% will win. But the fight you should be talking about is Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. That's the fight that everyone realistically should be watching.
Thank you.
Next. Oh, there we go, Deshan.
Question to Danielle. You were speaking about going to Drayton Manor. You got what's your favourite ride at Drayton Manor?
Probably that drop tower Apocalypse. It's not there anymore, but that was one of my faves. Now, Gold Rush, they've just opened it this year. I waited and waited and waited at that place to open a new roller coaster. It was like a dream that I really wanted to do, and I left just before they opened it. But I did Nemesis Reborn this year, so it's all good.
I can't believe you didn't say Thomas Land. That's obviously the best
Hey,
thing.
I used to be best friends with the Fat Controller.
Hey, that's the best place.
I've got a question for Elian. Which bit do you enjoy the most? Because you're directing your films, you're shooting your films, and you're writing your films.
Yeah.
What do you want to be?
Director. Yeah, yeah, everything. Director, definitely. I think again, starting up and coming from the student base, sometimes you've got to do all the roles at once and sort of juggle everything. And I think that's why, as we were saying earlier, with the networking, it's fantastic now to reach out to fellow Yorkshire filmmakers, Leeds filmmakers. Branching out now to London and stuff like that. So I'm finally finding the crew and building it up, and hopefully I can just sit in a little Scorsese chair and just do it again.
Got a question for Jake, as a fellow Liverpool fan. What sort of emotions do you go through? Excuse me. During a match, and obviously being a fan, it must be quite difficult to think I've got to be careful what I put on social media based on my own love for the team.
Yeah, you got to separate it really. Like, I think earlier in my career, like working at Salford, Blackburn, didn't grow up fans of those clubs, so it's quite easy to separate it. But obviously, you still want the club to win, because with that, you're going to get engagement that comes with it. You're going to reach more people, and obviously, the better the club does, the better for you and your job. But then at Liverpool, it's funny enough that I started the day I got offered the job, the day after Jurgen Klopp announced he was leaving, so I got brunt of the brain from my friends and family that he'd gone. And then we were in a title race up until, when I first started, and then it kind of fell off at the end of the season. You just kind of got to be United fans in the back or what? You've got to kind of you got to separate it. So it's not me I'll be posting on the channels, but it's not me posting from my perspective. You're kind of doing the brand's tone of voice. You've got to understand what your audience is. That also goes on to different channels. So, what you say on Twitter /X, whatever it's called these days, or Instagram, you kind of got to understand who's going to be looking at that. So, yeah, although you in the office, you might be giving it bifters a little bit. You kind of got to then take a moment to know what you're going to do.
Okay, hi. My question is for Greg Wright. So you've talked about the funniest story that you've covered. What do you believe was a career-defining story that you've covered at the Yorkshire Report?
The loan charge scandal, no question about that. Do read up on it. I mean, it is horrific. It's basically a tale of really wealthy people who were basically mis-selling tax schemes which claimed to be compliant, which weren't. HMRC did nothing about this for many years. And sadly, they then went after basically not the people behind the mis-selling, but the victims of the mis-selling. And, sorry, it's a very sad story, but 10 people died by suicide. It's the most harrowing story I've ever covered. And there's been a review announced by the government, but it's a very somber topic, this, but it is very important to remember that. The loan charge is an absolutely appalling scandal. It's something that has really affected me very personally. I've been covering it for 5 years. If you Google it, you'll see the stuff I've written about it. I know there's lots of things to talk about today, but essentially it's a classic example, I think. It is like the post office scandal. It's very similar to the post office scandal. Post office scandal, again, is powerful people basically who believe they're above the law and basically act as if they're above the law, and the people who are the victims who are bullied and maligned being attacked by powerful people. And in 10 cases, sadly, they kill themselves. So I'm sorry, this is sorry, it's so bleak, but it is the truth. You've asked the question, it is the loan charge. So yeah, I always think the loan charge, the mortgage prisoners is also very powerful as well. But I think if you want to chat afterwards, I can give you more information about it. But the loan charge is a story. And I think, again, this is the thing about business journalism, very briefly. People think it's very dry. It's all about every element of human behaviour in business. It's about people who are victims of scandals. It's about companies growing. It's about all sorts of elements of human behaviour. But yeah, it's the human interest stuff is very powerful. I think the loan charge is, I think, the story that will define me, if anything at all. So thank you for the question, and yeah, I'd advise you to read up on it. Thank you.
I've got a question for the panel, actually, as well. I just wanted to ask how important placement has been, certainly during your university time, and the sort of opportunities that you were able to gain out of that placement, and also asking for the students, do you have any placements available?
So, yeah, I would say the placements were absolutely vital for me. I had hands-on journalistic experience at a magazine and a newspaper when I was on placement. Just make the very best of it. Really go for it. Absorb information. Make contacts. Get your LinkedIn connection sorted. Connect with everybody who you meet, because every contact is like a little nugget of gold. You never know when that's going to come off. Create great connections and make the most of it. And I mean, in terms of the Yorkshire Post, I think we may do. I'm, by all means, happy to mentor people, encourage people if they so wish. But I would say, yes, attachments for me were absolutely vital. I know in terms of getting my first job in journalism, the fact I'd actually shown that I'd written stuff and had it published, there was actually a volume of my work in the public domain, was the thing that got me my first job in journalism. So I would say what you get here, the placements are absolutely vital. Make the most of them.
I think I need to give a massive shout out to Elric. Because when it came down to placements, all of the TV production companies were just snapped up instantly by my peers, and I couldn't find anywhere to go. So he basically said that, obviously you're making films in your own time, that there is such a thing as freelancing, and he gave me the option and the confidence, if you will, to make my own film as part of the placement, which was a massive eye-opener because I never thought that was possible anyway. And it made me make a film, again, obviously it's a whole creative process, but actually do it professionally and do risk assessments and safeguarding and it was a romance film, so there was some work with intimacy coordination and all this sorts of stuff. And it was a massive eye-opener, so I need to give a massive thank you to him, and then that ended up being screened at the Hyde Park Picture House. So massive thanks to Elric, who's not here, but yeah.
I think for me, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the placements here are invaluable, and it's actually the main reason I decided to come and study here. My first placement, going back, I did a week's work experience when I was at college at Northern Ballet within the marketing team, then did the 3-month placement that you do here with Phoenix Dance Theatre, which was in the same building as Northern Ballet, so I already knew the people there, which was incredible to have those have that connections. And then my second placement whilst I was here was at a student marketing agency called Campus Industries. I think they're still going. And that was one that I applied for via the university. The first one I saw myself. But as I said, getting all of those brands on my CV to be able to say I work with this and this and this as part of the agency was invaluable. But whilst I was here, I also tried to sort out like volunteer opportunities. So I went to the hospice in Headingley and went in and kind of said, this is such a great cause. I'm really interested in volunteering. I've got a day a week that I'd be able to make available for you guys. And old-fashioned way, went in through the door and said all of this and kind of like put my CV on the table. And then, I did a day a week for my final, 2 months maybe, in Leeds, in their fundraising team. And that was really invaluable as well, because by the time I graduated, I'd had maybe 3 or 4 different experiences that I could talk about.
Yeah, I mean, echoing what everybody else says in terms of how important it is for networking and everything like that. But I think as well for me, it just gave me a bit of clarity in what I wanted to do. When I started uni, I wanted to be one of those people on Sky Sports News on deadline day, stood outside the training grounds. And then when I'd done started uni and done a few pieces to cameras, I was like, yeah, I'm absolutely terrible at this. I don't want to do this anymore. So when I was had that dilemma of what am I going to do when I finish uni, and then when I went to Wakefield Trinity and just worked in their in-house media team, just doing all sorts really program writing. Snapchat was really big at the time, doing Snapchat stories, just all around loads of different things. And then that kind of gave me a bit of clarity that I actually want to work within a club. I didn't know it was going to be social, but that was kind of gave me the direction. So then when I finished uni, that was pretty much everything I applied for. It was just different football clubs, rugby clubs, even some local basketball clubs and everything like that. And then from there, started working internally in clubs and then just narrowed it down to focus on social. But if I hadn't done a placement, I don't think I would have known what I wanted to do coming out of uni.
I think for me, and if I'm very honest, I left stuff quite late. I wasn't the most proactive student, but when it came to it, I was like, oh, right, everything's taken. What am I meant to do? So I reached out to a football charity that I knew a little bit called Football Beyond Borders, but they were based in London. I was like, how am I going to navigate this to make it work? So I reached out to them and go, look, I want to come out to London and be able to do some content for yourselves and then edit it, etc. and stuff. So they were like, yeah, we've got a few videos we need editing for social media, but also for YouTube, etc. So I did a couple of bits for them, but also they had contacts to Copper 90 at the time. So within that placement, I was able to then diversify and go with Copper 90 for a little bit as well. But I would definitely say in terms of placements, one, get in as early as possible and be prepared to do that. And don't leave it late. Do not leave it late, because then you'll be traveling to London at least once a week doing it. And that's exactly what I was basically doing for my placement. But they are super important. And any type of work you do on your placement, especially if it's content related, back it up. Keep a copy for yourself, because that's something, again, I didn't do whilst I was here. And when it came down to interviews, they were like, what have you done? I was like, it's on my CV. They were like, physical copies or anything? I was like, no. So that's another thing I would definitely say. When it comes to your placements, back up everything you do for yourself as well.
Just, sorry, on the internships as well, we don't have any at Liverpool, but I know of, but you mentioned BComs, and
yes,
we have BCom students in all the time at Liverpool, not just in social, but our digital video unit and pretty much every department within the digital team. So if you're not on that and there's an opportunity for you to do so, I'd definitely recommend it, because from my experience at Liverpool, we have people in all the time.
And the same from Alton Towers' perspective. We don't explicitly have any placements available, but connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll get something sorted for you if you're interested.
Hi there, guys. So I work in careers here, and sometimes I get from finalists and graduates if I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to settle for a job. So, for example, Jake, I'm not going to work at any other club because I want to work at this specific club. And sometimes when jobs are not available, and same Danielle working at late rooms, for example. How would you advise a finalist or a graduate to shift that mindset to say that sometimes you do need to take that stepping stone before you go for the big silver fish, if you like?
Yeah, mine wasn't specifically I want to work at a specific club. It was just I wanted to do that job, so work within a club. But, as time went on, I started to expand what I was applying for a little bit, but I just wasn't right for it. I think it is just, for me, it was just a case of if you can volunteer, get to know people. That's how my first opportunity came. That's how a lot of my opportunities have come, is having known people beforehand. Even to this date, getting my job at Liverpool, I was working at Salford and had got there. I spoke to my line manager about doing some shadow work just at a Premier League club. she'd met someone at Liverpool that had opened up a door. I just did a day with them, just following them around, seeing how their social works. Kind of like positioned it really funny with Salford, because they was like, well, why would you want to do this? And I was like, well, I just want to see how someone else works, but I knew that I wanted to make that move. And then it just timed really well that somebody was leaving, but the fact that I had prior knowledge of how they work, like what systems they use. So then when I'd gone into my interview and we had like a practical assessment, it kind of gave me a bit of an inside track. So yeah, probably not answered your question in terms of like shifting your mentality, but I think if you do have like that attitude of you have a specific mindset of what you want to work in, I think it's just persistence. And you know, somebody once told me when I'd left one of my other jobs and was trying to get into another job in football, I started interning with Bradford City just off the back of working at Featherstone, and Ryan Sparks, who's CEO there now, was like, well, come work with us. And I was like, oh yeah, but it's not going to lead to a job there because they don't have any openings. He was like, yeah, but nobody's going to sit there and ask you what you've been up to. And if you say, I'm just waiting for my golden opportunity in football, no one's going to think anything of that. It's just about, you've got to try and be as proactive as possible. Yeah, keep meeting people, try and do work if you can, because it will open up doors.
I'm going to be completely honest. I did have a mindset of, this is where I want to work. I want to work at Merlin. This is what I want to do. And like you said, I didn't get on the grad scheme, and I'm not going to lie, I cried. Like, I was really emotional and really upset about it. But the job came up at Super Break and Late Rooms, and I was like, do you know what? This is a good opportunity. They work with Merlin, they work with Alton Towers, so I'll go here for a little bit, build up some relationships, network, that kind of thing, with the people that work within these companies. I went to a ton of like networking events, trade shows, that kind of thing, again, to get my name out there. Still nothing came up at Alton Towers, so I was like, okay. Drayton Manor, they've got a job, that's amazing, that's a theme park. I'll shove around, maybe eventually I'll get to Merlin, but we'll see how it goes. And that was always intended to be a stepping stone. It ended up being nearly a 6-year stepping stone, but what I learned there was like invaluable. And like I said, I did a whole host of like marketing 360 stuff, everything from PR, crisis comms, social media, digital marketing. Like, I essentially covered the whole of marketing, and I learned so much. And by the time I came to my end of my time there, I was like, okay, I do want to go to Merlin. I still really want to go to Merlin. I've been trying to get to Merlin now for 7 years or whatever. Let me see what I can do. And a job came up it was like an influencer manager job within Merlin Entertainment as a group. And I got all the way to the end of it and didn't get it. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just destined. I'm just not going to work for Merlin. I had this great ambition, but maybe it just doesn't happen. And then I was like, no, I'm going to keep trying. And the manager, like the hiring manager for that role, sent me an email and was like, here's your feedback. However, there is a job at Alton Towers. And I was like, what? Okay, amazing. And she put me forward for it. The hiring manager for the job at Alton Towers was like, Danielle, of course, we know you. You do Drayton. You've been to this networking event. I've got you on LinkedIn. You spoke to me about this. So that really did stand me in good stead. But again, I think persistence and just believing in yourself, having that self-confidence, that might take a little bit of time, but you'll get there if you really, really believe you can and you really want to.
Excellent advice. Can we give a very big thank you to all our